All right. All right. Thank you for joining the CTO Dose Live. This is a first for the CTO Dose program, and thanks for our sponsors, Dell EMC, for making this possible. We're live from Dell Tech World 2018, beautiful Las Vegas.
2019.
Yeah, 2019. I'm still, and we'll talk about this. I have Todd Toles, Global Field CTO of the Modern Data Center. So Todd, it was a big story so far. So at the show, last year, 2018, it was about modernizing the data center. This year is about edge to core to cloud, way to digital transformation. I've been pretty critical of Dell EMC's kind of progress in cloud, specifically around data mobility. You're here to share a story with us around data mobility.
Absolutely. Yeah. So thank you for having me, by the way. So we'll talk a little bit about what we're trying to do from that point of view. Let's talk about where it fits, right? So where it fits in there. So what we're trying to do is, how do we use your data? How do you use your data to effectively in the cloud? It may be analytics, it may be development, it may be production. It may be all the three. But one of the things we all believe about is choice. Right. It's very important from a point of view is it's not an either or conversation, and it's an and that's what we see at Dell EMC, and that's what we're trying to deliver so that we let the customer choose what's best for them at that point in time, which may be different than 12, 14, 13, a couple months down the road.
Right. So because Michael and Jeff, everyone talked about the ability to move workloads from the edge all the way to the cloud.
Absolutely.
You can't do that without data.
Exactly. Yep. And it's really, we always look at it and say, so we always got to talk about what is your storage array doing in the cloud? And quite frankly, what I think is that's half the battle. Data is bits. You have to have context. And what I believe from a context point of view is you need to have security, RSA maybe. You need to have networking, Dell networking. You need to have compute. And where do you put them all together? You see VMware, right? It's a guest, a container. And what we announced at day one of Dell Technology World was our VCF integration. That's an important enabling component in what we're doing from a cloud story across what we're doing. And that really enables what we're trying to do from a storage point of view, which is enabling the customers to kind of migrate their data back and forth and giving them some cloud flexibility and really bringing that real across the environment. Right. But without that context, without that virtualization context, it really doesn't make it real. Does that make sense?
Makes sense. I've gotten into this back and forth with Tim Crawford, who's the CIO advisor over Avoya, and he's kind of challenged me, Keith, why does infrastructure matter? Yeah. And I think today on stage, they gave a really great example of everyone can have the same algorithms, everyone can have the same data. Whoever gets to the answer fastest wins. So let's talk about that.
Yeah, so one of the things that we bring to the table is that ability, right? So one of the things you have to think about is latency, right? So when you're in a cloud environment, in some cases, latency doesn't matter. Right. But quite frankly, if you're doing web work or you're doing work that has been refactored to be in a cloud fashion, absolutely. Generally, latency isn't important. But there's a lot of things I'm doing analytics, right? So as I walk down the street, as I look at autonomous cars, as I look at interactions with in simple things like grocery stores. Or if we look here, we're here in Vegas, right? So we look at what Vegas is doing. All that stuff is all designed to do in real-time analysis. And in some cases, that makes best sense to do it on-premise. In some cases, it makes best sense to do it in the cloud. But what we do here at Dell Technology is we give you the ability to choose what's best for your particular architecture. So for example, I may want to do some real-time analytics as close to the data as possible. Right? That's where the edge fits in. In other cases, I want to take that and I want to aggregate that up. And maybe I want to do a large-scale data analysis, which best to be done in a compute environment in the cloud, because it's very transient. I'm going to do processing, I'm going to shut it down. And then I may be doing some long-term studies, and that may be best done on-premise. So we believe it's not just a single discussion. It's really you're going to do that. In some cases, you do edge. In some cases, you do cloud, and in some cases, you'll do storage in a traditional data center environment.
Okay.
Make sense?
Makes sense.
So ultimately, if we look at kind of our cloud-enabled infrastructure, where we're going to drill in today, right? We're going to talk a little bit about this. I kind of finished drilling this in here. So certainly we have cloud connected systems, right? So that's VCF we announced yesterday. We're going to spend most of our time talking about cloud data services, right? This is where I think you had some beef with Dell EMC.
This is where I've had the beef with Dell EMC in the past. Like Dell EMC, the storage company. Where's your storage?
What are you doing?
Yeah,
what are you doing, right? So and then we also look at cloud control and cloud monitoring. Right? How do I do that?
Right.
So Cloud IQ, for example, is our cloud-based monitoring service. How that fits in the portfolio. And all that needs to tie together with applications. Because quite frankly, if we're just doing this to make press, it doesn't make sense. It has to be customer usable across the environment. That's what we're trying to do all across the environment. And then of course, cloud consumption models, right? How do we consume it? Right, so it's not a buy versus lease discussion. Price per terabyte or price per month is always important, and that's what we're trying to do here. And we, for example, in the cloud data services, that's how we're doing it. Right, so it's not you don't purchase this. You just like in a traditional public cloud provider, you go ahead and do a price per, something unit per month, unit per year.
Right.
We're doing very similar in this model as well.
Which is very critical. I mean, there's not much point if I can get the data to the cloud, and I still have the same traditional way of paying and consuming for services. If I want a cloud operating model, not only do I want my data close to the cloud, I want to consume it as I consume cloud services.
Absolutely. And actually, I think that brings up something else that I think is very important. I think just plopping a virtual version of a storage appliance in the cloud, to me, is a transitional step, but it's not the right step. Right? And we always talk about when you do a cloud application, what's the most important thing to do? You refactor it.
Exactly.
Right? You build it into a cloud model, right? So you maybe rebuild containers. You were operating a different model. You have to behave that way.
And to be frank, you guys said, last year before last, you kind of announced these cloud appliances solutions, and I'm thinking, Chad Sackett a couple of years ago did Skill IO in the cloud. 1 million IOPS, really cool back then. But the applicability, it was more of a hybrid step than it was this true way of consuming cloud. It was cool trick, but not really practical.
Right, how are you going to use it in production?
Exactly.
Right? And that's what we're trying to do here, is make it real. Right, so kind of the whole theme of what we're trying to do from Dell Technology is make it real.
Okay.
Right, so that's what we're trying to do across the environment. So let's kind of take a look at some of what we're doing from the examples point of view. So we're drill into that. Just click here, give it time to update across here.
Latency. This is the latency we talked about.
This is cloud-based service. We have cloud-based latency. We're bopping ourselves back and forth. In some cases, that's fine.
Right.
And in other cases, it may not be as good.
Yes.
Right. So what we're doing here, right? So we have what we call the Dell EMC Cloud Storage Services. So ultimately, what we're trying to do here, point of view, is give ourselves the ability to have data being replicated up into a near-term data center, near to the cloud, and use the cloud actually what it's really good for burstable workloads. Right? So the economics work. We think the economics work very well because that gives us the ability to go ahead and not have to pay for the compute until we need it.
Right.
So that gives that's one of the use cases we're doing. We kind of look at it this case. Certainly from a speed point of view, it's high speed, low latency, right? So we're doing direct replication using our native products, right? So we're doing PowerMax, we're doing PowerMax replication, we're doing Unity, we're doing Unity replication, Isilon, we're doing Isilon replication.
So let's spend a little bit of time on this, because this is, I think, a lot of where the debate is at. When I talk to people about VMware Cloud on AWS, which is based on VCF, it is the foundation of the Dell Cloud strategy. The pushback that I get is that, you're taking a legacy approach to cloud services and you're putting it, or data center services, and you're putting it in cloud. But the flip side of that is that, I get operational consistency with all the advantages of cloud.
Absolutely.
So help connect the dots for me from how being able to replicate from PowerMax to PowerMax, from platform to platform, gives me the advantages that I'm looking for in cloud, but the operational consistency that I'm used to. Because I'm going to have, if I bought a PowerMax, I just bought it last year or this year.
For sure.
And I need to get at least another 2 to 3 to 5 to 7 years out of that.
Sure.
How do I do it?
Yeah, so what we believe that makes sense is we use that VCF framework as the framework, right? So the common operational model. So one of the things that has a problem in cloud environments is what you're doing in AWS is different than what you're doing in GCP, which is different than what you're doing in Azure. They might as well be different products, because they are, right? They're not. There's no common operational. And then if you look what you're doing on-premise or you're doing in the edge, that has to be different as well. So one of the things that VCF gives us is that common framework across the environment. right? So replicating to the cloud, what we're trying to do from that point of view is leveraging that ability to do and bring that as close to the cloud as possible, and then using direct connections into, for example, AWS, the VMC on AWS cloud. But that's not the only solution. We'll talk about what we're doing for VMC on AWS later.
So as we get into that kind of point, the thing that's sticking in my head is I understand the relevance for PowerMax customers today, or traditional storage, EMC storage, Dell EMC storage customers. I can get platform to platform consistency. But as I look at net new, I'm cloud native, and I want, I tell people their multi-cloud strategy starts with data. And as you look at the big traditional data storage companies, and they talk about multi-cloud, you have to pick a dog in the fight. You can't say, oh, I'll be agnostic, because that doesn't work today. S3 won't cut it. I need some level of block for replication, et cetera, et cetera. So, I'd like to hear, as you talk to the story, why invest new? Why come new to the Dell EMC platform?
Correct. So let's make it simple. Right. So in many cases, cloud native will make sense.
Right.
In some cases, if you have burstable workloads, that makes a lot of sense. If you have environments that are generally steady state, right? So let's take, for example, like a financial services application, very transitional, very transactional, very traditional in the way it's operating. To go ahead and just plop that on the cloud without refactoring doesn't make sense.
Right.
Obviously, if I wrote everything from scratch, well, I would say the vast majority of companies don't have 100% of their applications written in the cloud. I would say that the number that is 100% cloud enabled in terms of company applications, measures in the 0.1, 0.2%.
I'm an SAP guy, so I think of it, and I'll let you get back to your presentation shortly, and I know people are kind of like, Keith, let him talk. But I have a lot of questions about this. I have a lot of questions. I'm the Howard Mark. So.
I would rather have the conversation.
So as we transition, as we go hybrid, and I look at the Azures of the world, the Google Computes, the AWSs, they have a really good story around hosting SAP. And if I want a single cloud provider, they have a solid story. However, I'm going to need that data for analytics.
For sure.
In GCP versus in Azure.
Which is a lot better.
Right. So I think the argument is of this conversation. This is why do you, and I get pushback from this, and I'm a believer in this. I still need some type of traditional storage on the back end so that it enables the future. So that we agree on. The question is why EMC, and I think we're getting to that.
So why Dell EMC? Certainly, obviously, the heritage of Dell EMC in terms of reliability, in terms of availability and performance is I would say bar none. Right? So we are the leaders in that market space. What we needed to work a little work. I would agree with you, right? So we're bringing that now to market now. Is that ability to go ahead and say, all right, I want to go ahead and transition things back and forth between the cloud. And by the way, I don't want to be in bed with one cloud provider. I want to do a multi-cloud, because we believe on-premise is a cloud, right? Google GCP, for example, is a cloud. AWS is a cloud. VMC on AWS, another version, right? Azure, so forth and so on. There's many different ways to go ahead and do things, but the problem is all of them are very specific, right? So as you mentioned, right? Maybe I run an SAP on AWS, well, but I can't do analytics very well. Maybe it's better to do it on GCP, right? If you're in an Amazon world, it's very hard to go back and forth.
Exactly.
Right, and I think that's where Dell Technologies gives us that ability to go ahead and do. So first off, our first thing is what we're kind of doing is first for disaster recovery. So we see this for customers. Many customers either haven't been able to do disaster recovery seriously, or just operationally want to take themselves and make an economic move to make it more efficient. So what we believe is, all right, let's keep the data inside the control, right? So let's replicate it using existing methods, very tried and true, very good from a performance perspective across the environment. And then let's use, for example, in this case, VMC on AWS as a compute layer. And it's time to go into disaster, we can go ahead and do that.
So let's translate this into a couple of products. So, I was a former EMC customer, so I have my RPA, I have my VMAX to VMAX replication. So I could use either one of those solutions. And even if I look at it from, if you even go to secondary storage, I had data domain to data domain type replication. So you're saying that I can leverage those same tools to back up into VMC on AWS.
Correct. So in what case we're doing here is we're doing it to a data center local or close to that cloud data center. Right. So for example, site in Reston.
So if I already have like direct connect to AWS, I'm familiar with the concept. I'll have you guys will be co-located somewhere close to that nearby that direct connect. So same concept.
Yeah, call it across the street, call it in direct connect distance. Right. So and what we're doing here is because we're replicating the data outside that, we're not paying egress charges or ingress charges, and because we're not running anything in normal steady state, we're not charging CPU charges as well. Right. So because it's all being but from an economic point of view, it is economically purchased at a cloud type consumption model.
Okay, I get the economics. It's important for me to understand the economics because, if normally when I try to do this by myself, it's too expensive.
For sure.
If I can go and put data, I can put a storage array in a colo. But now I'm paying for that compute price. I'm doubling my cost.
And you're maintaining it.
Right, and I'm maintaining it.
Right, so you're maintaining it. So what we're doing is we're giving you that world, right? So you have the ability, for example, in a virtualized world, this is virtualized, right? So we have VMware SRM built in. All right, so that rather than you have to learn the technology in that, deliver that technology, it'll be delivered as part of our service.
Oh, okay.
Right, so we make it easier for you.
Yeah, because that is one of the tough things. When I talk to clients and I talk to them about DR in the cloud, even when it's VMC on AWS, it's, you know what, I have to spin up SRM, I have to have somebody learn SRM. SRM is VMware's replication solution for replication, the VMware Site Recovery Manager. They have to learn whatever replication technology. They have to manage that. It's a whole nother layer of frustration.
Yes. Yeah. And then I have to go ahead and get myself into spinning up the compute. Right. So that automation is all done by us. Right. So we do that as a service. And we think that's service number one. Right. So we think that's very useful for customers, most likely mid-sized customers. Right, so really small customers probably not economically viable, and if you're a large customer, quite frankly, you probably have
I have the capability. Resources. I have the resources capability. I'm already doing something similar today to another data center. So this is just VMC on AWS or now VMC on the Azure. Hopefully, is now just another data center, and I'm doing it. Mid-sized companies, and this is where I run into a lot of challenges. They can conceptualize this, but spinning up a whole team. Getting the design together, getting together operations to do this and manage it and paying for it becomes a challenge.
And that's true, and even names you would be very household names.
Yes.
Right? It's just because it's operational, it's not in their DNA. Right? If they're making widgets, that's their job, right? They're not, compute, IT is an important thing for them, but ultimately it's not about making widgets.
As an enterprise architect, 40% of my time is on DR. Just DR design, DR operations, DR changes to DR, etc. It's a lot of overhead.
Absolutely. So that's service number one that we're offering. Right. So for you say, you know what, I don't like VMC and AWS or Azure. Right. I want to do it on my own cloud provider. I want to spin it up at my leisure. So that's option number two. So I'm not going to be in a VMware world. So I'm not going to have Site Recovery Manager, but I now have the flexibility as I don't need to run it on VMC. I can go directly to Azure. I can go directly to AWS. I can go directly to GCP.
So Todd, I gotta stop you. And I'm gonna call kind of like hold on this because this is marketing marketing basics. I can replicate to Azure, or I can replicate the storage, but spinning up my workloads in cloud with the networking, with the everything else. It's hard.
Absolutely.
That part of it, I can get the storage there. I can get the storage there today.
I can get the bits. The
bits are easy, but actually operationalizing DR, non-native VMware stuff in the cloud is a fool's errand.
That's why I talked about the first one solution, because I think that's the better solution. This is a second option. For some customers may say, you know what, I don't want to do that. Or I want to be able to spin things up. I think it's really a transitional case to the third one, which is, hey, you know what? I want to have the ability to go ahead to Amazon one day. I want to have GCP one day, Azure one day, but I want to have a common way of interacting data. I think the DR, if you're going to do it right. Do it right with VM. In most cases, it's virtualized. Do it with VMware SRM and do it properly. But for some customers, that's not what they want to do.
And that's fine.
They may have an agreement with Microsoft. They may have something that they can't do that.
And when you do that and you mess it up, call me and we'll talk. But there's a distinct advantage to doing it that way. the ability to have the data there is the underlying part of having just immense capabilities.
Yes.
There's a way I talk to people, they're using this methodology to modernize their apps.
Yep.
Because getting the data to the cloud provider is one of the biggest challenges.
For sure.
Once I have the data there, I can do a snapshot of the data.
Yep.
I can give it to a dev environment. I can give it to a QA environment. I can take my SDLC process and move it to this cloud workflow now that my data is there. So if DR could very well be the first step. So, bare metal, bare fist at DR, where we have that second option, and we're, kind of forcing our on-premises design to work in cloud native.
Yep.
That's fine. It works for some people. But it exposes, I think, a bigger capability of being able to modernize applications.
Absolutely, which is the final one, right? So the final offer that we have here is really the ability to go ahead and I have the data up into the cloud, and then I can use it for analytics. So one of the things that's a little different than, for example, Google has ways of doing it, Amazon has ways of doing it. What this is it's very platform independent. So today I can say, I want my analytics to be in GCP. Tomorrow, Amazon may have a better price. I may want to go into Amazon.
Right.
So that gives me that flexibility in the environment. And remember, I'm also not paying the CPU charges, and I'm not paying the egress charges for moving the data back and forth, because that's really where the economics get crazy expensive.
So let's talk about the economic piece.
Yep.
How are we able to control egress charges if the data?
Because the data never goes into the cloud provider.
Okay. The computer's in the
Yeah.
So if I'm reading as much as I want from the data, especially for analytics,
Absolutely.
if I'm reading, I can read it at this relatively low latency. I can do the processing. When I return results, I'm not returning results typically of terabytes.
Correct.
I'm very small results.
Yep.
I'm training. I'm doing AI, ML training, etc. I get the results of that, and I can either keep it in the cloud provider, store it onto my well spread out compute. Doesn't matter. Egress is not a material.
Absolutely. And when I'm done with it, I can shut down the compute and pay nothing to the cloud provider.
So let's talk a little bit about the developer experience. As I'm developing applications, we have to have kind of the stick and carrot. We want developers to put data there.
Yep.
We want internal customers to put data there. Just because I build it doesn't mean they'll come. Sure. What's the incentive from a development experience for getting data into that environment?
Economics. I think the economics, from a development point of view, obviously cost drives everything, right? Ultimately, I would love to be able, as a developer, to have as much as I want from a compute point of view, but obviously I can't do that. Right. So if I'm trying to test a new model, and I have the ability to go ahead and spin things up temporarily, and I can do as much compute as I want in the cloud, and I spin it down, right? So I'm paying for only what I'm doing. Right. I'm not paying for anything that just sitting there. I'm not paying for anything that I might use later. I think that's where we can make some economic models that will actually make it easier for developers' point of view, and they get all the flexibility of running in the cloud environment. So from their point of view, where the data sits, they don't know.
So they don't know where the data sits.
Right.
They're using their cloud native APIs to curate the apps.
Correct.
And they're just calling the data, and for them it doesn't. I don't care. It's in the cloud somewhere.
And in some cases, they may say, I like Amazon. That's what I want to do.
Right.
Maybe on another guy, same data set says, I'm a GCP guy. I know all about GCP. So I want to use that. That's fine. We can do that. Right. So we give them the flexibility for a developer point of view to not say, we have a contract with Amazon. You can only go there. Okay. Right. So that's the flexibility, and what we're doing is you can move things back and forth across the environment. Also for cross-hub trust, but also for developer point of view is use the tools you're comfortable with, right? So if you're comfortable with Amazon tools, great. You're comfortable with Azure tools, great. Give you flexibility. You want to run it with VMC on AWS, great. We can go ahead and do that, right? So the idea is you can move things back and forth, but you always have to convert it. Right. We're not converting data, right? So we don't have to convert it, right? So we're doing that as we're going, as the data is coming through. So we don't have to go ahead and worry about that. So it gives us a lot of flexibility from the developer point of view and from the company point of view, is it gives them the flexibility, right? So one of the things we're trying to do is say flexibility, right? So in the cloud, great. We want to do some work on on-premise, great. We have the data wherever it needs to be, right? And that's what we're here to do at Dell EMC. We want to provide, the data is the most important thing, right? Whether it happens to be an edge or a compute or in the cloud, it's all about the data. Yep. Makes sense?
All right, makes sense. So we got any more? Is that was a lot?
Yeah, it's a lot. We talked a lot.
We talked about a lot. Was there any more?
No. I mean, that's the three services that we're basically offering today.
We announced some of them yesterday, right? So all tied together with part of the Dell Technologies family with VMware VCF on top of it, where it makes sense. With VMC on AWS, and it gives you the kind of the flexibility to move the data in a container.
All right. So we're going to wrap up by going to YouTube, the YouTube channel, and making sure that there's no questions from the audience or questions. There are no questions. So Todd, I really appreciate you taking time out of your busy Dell Technologies World 2019 schedule in Vegas. Hopefully we don't get any more rain.
Right.
I think they really like rain in Vegas, but when you have 15,000 people trying to enjoy the city, rain is a bit of an inconvenience.
So you and I are both from Chicago, so it's better than snow.
It is.
We just had snow.
We just had snow. It's, it's almost May and we just had snow. So there's that. So you want more of Dell Tech World? You can actually, there's a landing page for Dell Technologies. Dell Tech World is Dell Technologies. It's DellTechnologiesWorld.com. If you want to find out more about the CTO Advisor, you can find us on the web, thectoadvisor.com. You can find me on Twitter at CTO Advisor. Todd, you tweet?
Yep, at ToddToles.com.
All right, talk to you next. CTO Dose. Join us live tomorrow at 1 p.m. Pacific.
Thank you.